Okay, so tonight's card, we're going to start with, it's a technique called the Joseph coat, or Joseph, yeah, and apparently it's based off of the Joseph Technicolor Dream Coat kind of thing, and I think it's because there's so many colors that get hidden kind of under a under things, so it kind of just shows this really beautiful subtle color. These are the examples that I did. So we've got a couple of different kinds. This one was done through a stencil. These are fine lined background stamps. This was also a background stamp with slightly thicker items. You can do this with any kind of basic item that you can use VersaFine on, or an embossing ink of any kind. You can do this technique with. I am going to start, same as usual. I'll do a run through. I'll do one start to finish, and just kind of walk through the steps, and then I'll do one with you guys. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my white panel here. So, and this is just slightly thicker cardstock. I think it's about 110, or it's about 100 pound, 110 pound. This is accent opaque. Could be using Nina Solar Crest White or Reflections, whatever. You just want a thicker cardstock that will take a lot of ink. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ink pads and I'm going to lay down a lot of ink on here. You want it to be fully saturated. If you don't feel like using blending brushes, you can actually take your ink pads directly to the paper. And I'll do that on my second example of just taking my ink pads, because I've got some really great little memento cat's eyes here. And I'll just do some stripes and whatnot. But on this one, I'm going to use my new Lavinia Elements inks. They're really nice and juicy. You want to use a dye-based ink. And really, the only reason you need to use a dye-based ink is just so that it absorbs into the paper, because once we're done with this step, we're going to be doing some heating embossing on it. So we want to be able to have it dry and not have our embossing powder stick everywhere. Okay. When you're doing this technique, you don't need to worry about getting a super great blend or anything like that. You're not going to see all of the ink that you're going to be putting down, so you don't need to worry too much about getting the best blending between your colors or anything like that. It can look like a hot mess. You'll be amazed at the difference once everything's all finished there. It'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe how well that turned out. This one. So for those of you that have looked at the, wondered about the new Lavinia ones, look at how much ink comes off on these. Like it's phenomenal how much ink is in these Elements by Lavinia. They're just so nice. Take some green. I don't like that. Before I get it in. One more color. Yeah. Somebody's joining us just in time. Oh, Roxanne Z. Okay, so basically all you're starting with, because we just had somebody just pop in here. So what you're starting with is you're just laying down a ton of ink onto your cardstock panel, basically. That's all we need to start with. That's where we're going to begin. Okay. And so you can see it's a pretty good blend, but it's not, whoops, sorry, get in frame, pretty deep, saturated. I didn't do like phenomenal blending here. Doesn't have to be really perfect or anything like that, because we're going to be going over this. So now through the magic of video and television, because this is going to take some time to dry, and I can use my heat tool on it if I need to, but because I'm slightly anal retentive, I have some already ready to go here, and I didn't want to have to wait to dry. So into my stamp platform, I have put the panel, so similar to the one that I just did a nice rainbow background here. I've got it in my stamp platform. So the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to pull out my little embossing buddy, little cornstarch package here, and I'm just going to tap it around, make sure I'm getting good coverage. Okay. This is especially important if you're going to use the panels that you have done tonight, because if I were to put, even though it looks like it's dry to the touch. If I were to try and put embossing powder onto this right now, it would definitely stick. So we'll use our embossing buddy to ensure once we've dried it that it is actually ready to go and we're not going to get too much stickage. Okay, next thing is going to be, I'm going to be using Versamark, but you're going to want whatever embossing liquid ink you have. Okay, so I know some people use Tim Holtz's Distress Emboss. There's the Boss Pad, which is by Wow, I think. Somebody might even just have the Reflections one from, what do you call it, from Michaels. Any embossing ink will work. You're gonna ink up your stamp. Swing over the door. And I pulled that too far there. There we go. And I'm just going to give it a good rub. Make sure I get a good impression. Okay. Now, also, when we've used our embossing buddy, we want to make sure that we're stamping again, because when we put it down, the first layer will often lift off some of our ink on here. Okay, so it's lifting off some of that powder. So if we want to make sure that we're getting a stellar impression with it, you want to do it twice if you can, which is why it's a good idea to use a stamp platform. If you're not using a stamp platform, it will still work. You're just giving yourself the opportunity to have a slightly, giving yourself the opportunity to have it turn out even better is where I'm going with that. Okay, so now I can see here I've got a really good impression, which is nice. So I'm going to bring out my clear embossing powder. Oh, a spoon out of there. Okay, now I'm just going to walk it down and let it coat itself in the clear embossing powder. Missed a spot. Here's the spot. Okay, so I'm just going to have a look at it here. Looks like it coated pretty good. I don't see any stray in any of the areas I don't really want it in. Oh, now I'm going to pull out my embossing tool, my heat embossing. Yeah. So I'm just gonna give it a quick glance, make sure that everything melted. You can see. Now it looks pretty cool. Go back in frame here. Sorry, guys. Looks pretty cool already. It's really nice with that. Even though I didn't do the best job blending, that would still make a beautiful card front. Okay, now comes the fun part, the shocking part, if you will. Oh, I am going to use just regular Memento. So I'm just giving it, I just gave it a couple of minutes while I was chatting with you guys there for this to now all dry. So basically all of my embossing has now, the plastic part or the rubber, it's not rubber, the part that is melted is now dry. So I'm not going to be removing anything. I'm going to take my dye-based ink. So I'm just currently using Memento Tuxedo Black. You can use whatever dye-based ink you have. You can use a pigment ink too, but it's gonna take a long time for it to dry. So your best bet is to use a pigment, or sorry, a dye-based ink so that you can cover it up and have it dry quite quickly. Now I'm just gonna go directly to paper. You can use a blending tool if you feel like you need to. Take a dry piece of paper towel here. And I'm buffing. So essentially every place where the clear embossing fluid went, or where we embossed, everything that has that film on it is now resisting the black ink. So it comes through. So we have that color that is now trapped underneath the clear ink. And pull that up so I don't stick my elbow in it. Let's give it a last little buff there. Do my mat a little. And there we go. We have a beautiful background where we have the beautiful colors. So you can see how it doesn't matter how great or how bad my blending was underneath that, because we're covering it with so much of a darker color already to begin with. All it shows now when it comes through is just that beautiful color underneath. So you can do an ombre look. I did a variety of greens on one of the ones that I did. And so when I stamped it, then you get different shades of green in different areas. You can do bright colors. You can do more muted colors. It's harder to show through the black or a dark navy or something like that. But essentially, whatever color you put underneath, wherever you stamp or use a stencil if you want. Next example that I'll do is I'll do a stencil. When you do that, it gives you whatever you've put as your the area to be embossed, whatever color is under there, that's what's going to show through. Okay. Now I could just quickly finish this here. So I'm going to take off the edges on this guy. A little bit more, I think. And then if you have any places that didn't possibly, like maybe you didn't get your ink in the right place, or it may not have embossed perfectly, no worries. You just trim it down a little bit, like so. Throw the card back. So I like that nice bright rainbow on the, I think I need to change, cut down a little bit more on the sides. Get that on the back of my card. I don't really have to put a flower on it or something. Okay, and oops. And then pulling out of the magic die area here. Let's see. Just like that. Out of my little magic cup that has all my extra dies ready to go. Stick that on there to dry. Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions? That's the technique in a nutshell. Does anybody have any questions before we do a walkthrough? Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up from Heather there. Before we do the walkthrough, I'll do it with you guys. We're good to proceed. Okay. All right, I'll put that away then. All right. Then what I would do with this is I would just probably put on a couple of iridescent jewels. Call it good. There we go. Something a little rainbowy or something. Nice and easy peasy. Okay, so where are we going to start? First place that we're going to start is with our piece of cardstock. Okay, and whatever inks you're going to use. Okay, so you need, this is where you're going to have your dye-based inks. So I'm going to use a variety of, I've got some reds, some yellows. I'm going to make kind of like a, I don't know, what am I going to do here? I guess I'm going to do a bit of a, I was thinking I was going to do sunset, but I think I'm going to do a some leaves. I'm going to use my leaf stencil to demo the stenciling in. Okay. So we've selected our colors that we want to use. Got them out here. Basically, so if you're using, whether you're using a blending brush, sorry, get it into frame there. Using a blending brush, or you're using a blending brush, or you're using a makeup sponge, or direct to paper. So this is just a little Memento ink cube here. And I'm just going to randomly mark it on my paper here. Put in some color wherever it feels like wherever I feel like I want to put color. And even if you have little patches of white in some places, it's still, that'll be fine. It's not going to matter once you're at the point where you're done. So It won't be the end of the world if you end up having a couple of spaces where it didn't absorb entirely. You'll be fine. Get some of that. Okay. Okay, how's everybody doing there? We still need some time. People to get their stuff on the go. Okay. Once you get to this point and you have your panel colored, you have the ink on it that you want to have on it, okay? If you decide, I don't like how that color showed up there, maybe I'll take this bright red here and I'll add, you have to add it with the ink pad cream, not with the lid. There we go. There we go. Didn't just have enough red on there, so. Now, what we need to do, because this is dye-based ink, now it will dry quicker than pigment-based ink, but that was a lot of ink that we just put on that paper, okay? So now what we need to do is we need to dry our paper. So we're gonna help it along a little bit here using your heat tool. You wanna be careful though not to burn it. So dry it from the back a little bit, dry it from the front. If you're not sure that you dried it enough, the best way to test that is to take some of your embossing powder. Take some of your embossing powder, scoop it on there. Okay, so you can see here, right? So I was drying it, there was no Versamark on here, but look at how much, that's almost a solid coating. If I were to try and dry that, it would or melt that, it would keep everything exposed underneath, which of course is not what I want. I only want the places that I'm going to, I want specific areas to be nicely embossed, not the whole blooming thing. So that means I need to invest a little bit more time in drying. So, and don't forget, you want to continue to move your heat tool around because you don't want it to burn anything. Better. Yeah. Now it's only marginally sticking. Okay. So I've gotten mine to the point where it's only a little bit sticking, which my embossing buddy will take care of. So that'll be okay. So now, because I said I was going to use a stencil, this is going to look a little different for me than for you guys. So put your item into your, put your stamp into your stamping platform, whatever you're going to use. Okay. I am going to heavily coat my piece of paper here with my embossing buddy.
Okay, I have a wood block stamp.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna have to make sure I have a lot of
Yeah, make sure you turn it up. Make sure that you're looking at your image. Like when you've inked it already, make sure that you're having a good look at it to see, okay, have I gotten enough on there? Kind of thing.
And you said you can use embossing or Versamark, right? Or no?
Versamark or, well, any kind of embossing ink. Versamark is the ink.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Oh, because I have an embossing dauber. That's why I'm mixed up.
Yeah. That's what I'll be using as an embossing dauber. Yeah, that should work. Yeah, you'll get a
Yeah, be able to see it better. I think because I don't know how wet my Versamark pad is. So okay.
Yeah. No, that will work, Roxanne. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, because that's essentially what I'm doing here. So I don't have a stamp on this one. What I'm going to use is I'm going to load up my blending brush here or blending tool. I'm going to load it up with Versamark like this. And then I'm going to stamp it into the areas on my stencil. When you're doing a stencil too, you kind of want to, when you stamp it down, you want to give it a little bit of a twist, just so that you know that you're getting the ink into each of the little corners there. What's interesting is as I'm going around doing this, I can see like it starts to lighten up a little bit, like it, because you can see the wet of the Versamark, which is helpful when you're doing it this way. So if you're stamping, put your item in there, ink up your stamp. Well, actually, first use your embossing buddy. Make sure that you're using your embossing buddy. So to de-static and to help dry it out. And then you're going to ink up your stamp using whatever you have as an embossing ink. So if it's your a dauber, or you have a Versamark pad, or even if you had a Versamark pen or something like that, you can draw it on there much like a felt pen, or your dauber kind of thing. And then you're going to stamp your image. Okay. Remember, if you have it in your an embossing platform, or sorry, stamping platform, you want to try and do it twice if you can. If your stamp is small enough and you had good enough connection with your items, with your magnets or whatever, that you don't feel like it's going to move on you, try and stamp it twice so that you're lifting the cornstarch or the powder from your embossing buddy, because you want as good a connection with your paper and your embossing powder as possible. Okay. The moment of truth. How much did I actually get on there? Oh, looks good. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So I can see where my Versamark is on here. Actually, you guys can see it there too. So you can see how good of a coating I got. So now I'm going to put it in my embossing powder. Trying not to stick my fingers in it. You want to make sure you give it a good flick. That will help make sure that you don't have any embossing powder in the areas you don't want it. Okay, and time to melt. Nice. Okay. How's everybody's turnout so far? Okay. So now I've got my leaves here, which look lovely. And I have, because it's a fall one, I'm going to want to use, so I'm going to just going to give that a moment, make sure it's dry. Yeah, it's good. Okay. I'm actually going to cover mine in a brown instead of the black on this one. So any dark color, if you've got like a super dark purple that you would like to use on something, or navy works awesome, black, dark brown. Okay. And then you just go in, once you've finished with your ink, go in and you buff it, and it just brings out all of those beautiful colors again. Turn it around. Okay. That might actually need to be re-inked. And then a nice little trick that you can do at the end here, if you want it to go back to being nice and shiny, is just reheat up your embossing powder. And it'll get that shine back. I'll just show you the difference. Okay. So if you look here, if you look at this leaf here, look at how dull that is because I ran my, because it had ink on it. But look at the other ones here that I've just reheated. Adds all that shine right back. Looks like you almost put crystal accents or I can't even remember what that other one is. Like makes it look like a sticker almost or something, and it just makes it pop. Super nice. There we go. There. Let's go back and do that on the other ones. I forgot about that. I forgot about that little tip. Okay. And then depending on what you've done as your card or whatever, as your sentiment, whatever you've brought. Let's see here. I want this on black. Quite nice one, huh? I'm going to do it on that. Yep. Okay, so now I'm going to trim this down again. And I'm adding a bit more of a border on this one than I normally do, but I kind of want that craft kind of to pop through on the other side. there, and we got a sentiment. I feel like this should be kind of a thanks card. Oh, I might use my other thanks. So I'm going to build up a sentiment, but I have this awesome burgundy velvet that I think, do I want to do it that way or do I want to do it that way? Nope, I'm going to do it that way. Yeah, so I'm going to cut out a couple more and then pop it up so it has a little bit of oomph to it here, and then some really pretty jewels on here, or even some Nouveau drops in a nice orange or brown glitter would be really pretty on here. So, but that's basically going to be my card. So I'm gonna, there we go. All right. Any questions? Does anybody want to do one more together, or you feel you got it? Okay, Heather's good. Gail, you're making out okay? You're good? Okay, Roxanne, you're good? Roxanne B? I have to switch to get the viewpoint for Roxanne C. Ethel, you're good for that? Oh, okay. Okay, and Roxanne, you got it? Roxanne Z, you're good? Okay. All right, so I'm going to end the recording here, and we can do a show and tell for anybody that wants to, and we'll get some news here. Okay. Wait a minute.